talking about standardized testing or test, we need to know that these tests require all test takers to answer the same questions or to answer the questions from the same pool or bank of questions in the same way. The standardized tests are also standardized in a way that they are marked in a similar way, and that's why they provide a good reason or platform to look into the relative performance of various students, individual students, as well as of various groups. The term of standardized testing is usually associated with large-scale tests which are administered on large groups of students. For example, a test which is administered on 8th grade students in an entire state. It could be a multiple choice question or any other well-designed test, and this would include administration on all the people or all the students who are at a certain level of learning for which this test is designed. A standardized test can also include true and false questions. It's not only reduced to multiple choice questions. It may include, as I said, true false questions, some essay questions, short answer questions, or a mix of questions. These days, such standardized tests are increasingly being administered through computers and online programs, and we got so many examples for this. The typical examples of standardized tests include college entrance examinations, for example, SAT, GMAT, GRE. They are the typical examples. In the domain of language proficiency, various tests are considered to be standard. For example, we have TOEFL and IELTS, which are the typical examples of standardized language tests used throughout the world. There are certain advantages associated with standardized testing. Such tests are considered to be a good source for the teacher because they are already prepared tests, and therefore they free teacher from putting a lot of effort to make a new test. So they are readily available for the teacher, and they are also objective in nature. Therefore, teacher could use them with some authenticity. They are also good in a way that they could be easily administered on a large population, and their scoring procedures are also already defined and streamlined, so teachers' effort is also reduced here. It also provides teachers with some guidance about the teaching. So teachers, based on such tests, can decide what to teach and when to teach something to their students. And they can provide accurate comparisons, not exactly accurate, but almost accurate comparisons between various groups of the students. There could be some disadvantages of these standardized tests as well. For example, we could see that they evaluate a student's performance at a particular time, and therefore they ignore the gradual development or progress of a student with learning a language. And they also seem to ignore the external factors which might have contributed to the performance of a student at a certain period in time. Because, as I said earlier, they focus on one-time assessment. They are also found to create a lot of stress for both students and teachers because they demand so many skills from both students and teachers. And there is also found that some users make an inappropriate use of such tests. The tests which are designed for a different purpose are used for a different purpose. For example, a proficiency test may be used as an achievement test by some examiners or by some teachers, which is not proper. Standardization actually presupposes certain standard criteria which would be used or held constant across the form of the test and the occurrence of the test, it may remain the same as many times the test would be conducted. Such a criteria is usually designed to apply to a broad band of competencies instead of focusing on one skill. It's on a broad band of competencies that are usually not exclusive to one particular curriculum. So it can be helpful and be applied to various curriculum. And a good standardized test is not a product of imagination only. It's a product of rigorous experience and research, and which definitely takes certain time. Norm reference test is a typical example of a standardized test. It focuses on comparing students in relation to their peers or other students who are taking the same test, as it compare and rank test takers in relation to one another, and usually they are measured in percentile scores. By percentile we mean that if a student scores 90% in a test, it means that he is as good as or is better than 90% of the other test takers in the same test. Criterion reference tests are also important tests, and they focus on measuring an individual's performance against a set of predetermined criteria. And they usually assess whether a student has been able to acquire or learn a certain body of knowledge which has been introduced to him or her in a classroom.